There was a time that I thought that being broken meant something had gone terribly wrong. Because that's usually what we think about broken things, right? If something breaks, we want to fix it. We hide the crack. We try to make it look like nothing was ever wrong with it. And so for a long time, I carried that same expectation into my life so that no one could ever tell that anything was wrong. Because when something didn't turn out the way I had expected, when a relationship had failed or hurt me, when my body was breaking down, when life took a turn for what I thought was the worst, my instinct was to ask, how do I get back to who I was before this happened? And over the years, God has shown me that it's not about going back to where I was. It's about going into something new. That realization became a huge part of why I wrote Broken Can Be Beautiful, Embracing New Beginnings. See, the title wasn't meant to pretend that brokenness feels beautiful while we're going through it. Because honestly, it doesn't. It's like, I love the metaphor of the butterfly. When a caterpillar goes into a cocoon, there is nothing beautiful about it. But when the emergence from the cocoon happens and you see the wings of the butterfly, it's gorgeous. There have been moments in my life where I've wondered why God allowed something to happen. There have been times when I prayed for circumstances to change, and then they didn't change the way that I had hoped. There have been times where I had begun to wonder what God was really doing. You see, I don't think that faith requires us to pretend that things don't hurt. And I have learned that broken and ruined are not the same thing. And that distinction changed so much for me. Because broken doesn't mean useless. Broken doesn't mean forgotten. Broken doesn't mean that God has walked away. And broken certainly doesn't mean finished. One of the things that I have learned through some of the hardest seasons of my life is that God can take things that I never would have chosen and use them to shape something that I never could have imagined. Ephesians 3:20, abundantly more than we could ask or imagine. Now, I'm not saying that painful thing suddenly became good, but because God was still good in the middle of it, I think sometimes we believe that healing means getting everything back, getting our old life back, that old relationship back, our old confidence back, the version of ourselves that existed before everything changed. But what if healing isn't about going backwards? What if sometimes healing is learning how to move forward onto something new? I know that can be hard to believe when we're standing in the middle of the pieces. We want to see the finished picture. We want to know how God is going to use this. We want some reassurance that this is not the end. And sometimes we just don't get that. Sometimes all we have is the next step. And maybe that's where you are today. Maybe something in your life looks very different than you thought it would. Maybe you're beginning again. Maybe you're grieving something that other people think you should already be over. Maybe you're trying to trust God while nothing in your world makes sense. Or maybe you simply just don't recognize yourself in this season. I want you to know that there is still beauty being written into your story. You may not see it yet. You may still be standing among the pieces, but God has never been limited by broken things. In fact, Scripture is filled with people whose stories looked messy, whose stories looked interrupted or disappointing, and sometimes completely impossible. And yet God was still working. And that became the heartbeat for Broken Can Be Beautiful. that not everything that happens to us is beautiful, but that God can create something beautiful even from the things that break us.